Alrighty, guys. Good morning. It's Wednesday, June 29th, 2022. Getting to the end here of the month of June. And I want to go back to yesterday and quickly just show you some of the awesome reactions we got off of our level. So going back to the open, remember yesterday it opened really strong. And I told you that there was something a little funky about it as we started to get to the top end. I started getting really skeptical of the bullish breakout that we were getting right out of the open. So we opened here within the sideways chop, and then the market just started ripping really, really strong. So gave a call to get long here off the FMA, and sure enough, the market held the FMA, I think within a tick or two, came up for a 9-point push right to 39.50 to the tick. Then we got a pullback. I called another call to get long off the 200 to see if we would attempt to go ahead and continue pushing. Although at this point, I told you, looking at some of the market internals, we started to see weakness despite the market ripping higher. And so we did get a 10-point bounce out of here, right up to 39.48. And then from there, market started ripping lower. As it pulled back, what I should have done, again, uh, heeding the advice that I was getting from my nicey tick chart, I should have started calling some shorts once we got down through the 200 and started breaking lower. But there was a potential for the market to bounce from this area right here. I told you choose a level, either 30, 75, or 29 here. Somewhere right around there made sense. And then the VWAP was always worth a try. So those two didn't work. VWAP got a little bounce and then the failure. And then we basically came right back up to the VWAP and failed. So we came down. I told you coming into 1650, you never know if that could hold. Sure enough, it bounced for about 10 points right to our VWAP. Couldn't get through VWAP, and then we started getting the continued sell-off here. Held the back end to 1650, maybe not perfectly cleanly there, but held that shaded zone that we expected to be support as the market came back. And then we just continued to sell off. Came back into the 200 here 2 times, could not get through, continued selling off, and then through this whole rally to the downside, where do we magically bounce? Literally to the tick off of our minor eye level. Actually, it broke it by 1 tick, excuse me. Came down, broke that, and then bounced back up. Couldn't really get through the fast moving average once again, and then went ahead and continued to sell off. And then again, another area where within the sell off we get a pretty appreciable bounce right into our next expected area of potential support, 38.53 to 54. They did duck a little bit through it, but then came back up, held, and went ahead and tried to break back up to the upside where they hold the 200 moving average. Then they came back down, retested that level, and it looked like we were maybe going to get some short-term support there, but didn't really get very far. Started to get through the fast and the short moving, slow moving average, just didn't really get anywhere. Continued to sell off, and then came down where? For the next pretty significant bounce, right off our next area of expected support here at 38.43. Came up, came to the back end of the 38.53 support area, could not break through, tried to break through a second time here, continued to sell off. Didn't really do much here at the next expected support level. You can see there was a little micro bounce a few times and then it just broke through. And then from there, the market came down right into, and what was the low of the day yesterday? The low of the day yesterday was our major eye level, 38.22. I mean, I don't know how much better you can get with these type of levels. I mean, literally selling off and then getting a bounce right off of each level as it's sold off. And I'm not talking about a little micro 1-point bounce. This came right into 74, almost got a 10-point bounce, and then the bears swatted it down. This one here came right into 53 and got, 16, 17-point bounce, right? Then came down to this one, bounced from 42 to 54 for 12 points. And then finally, like I said, at the end of the day, we came down and the low of the day was literally our major eye level at 38.22 here, broke it by 1 tick. And then we got this bounce from 38.22 all the way up to 38.34 for another 12-point bounce. And then in the overnight session, let's go ahead and zoom back in here. the market bounced right off 22 again as they came back down. Notice where they're holding right in our shaded area there. Could not break through multiple times. Tried riding on the VWAP and then failed back down. And now here we find ourselves coming into this morning. And it was messy throughout here, but notice that the major fib level up to 34 was acting as pretty extreme resistance here all through the overnight session. And then they came down and bounced to the tick off our next level at 38.12. Feel like I should be getting some awards here for how well these things have worked. So this is where we find ourselves coming into the open here, really sideways and choppy in this little pocket right here. And I want to show you, I think it's really interesting. I want to show you this pocket right here, what that is in the higher time frame, from a higher time frame view. So I'm going to zoom out to my 60-minute chart here, and I want you to look at where we are bouncing around here this morning. Right here, between just about 38.12 and highs just about 38.34. Well, where were we looking at this box before? If we just scroll back to June 24th, this was this little consolidation zone, balance area, whatever you want to call it, right over here from about 38.12, 38.14 up to this 38.35. So look at this. You zoom that over, that box is exactly the box that we're trading in right now. And then even more interesting, if you go back to the previous time we were over here, let's take a look at this. Let's see if we have enough screen real estate to zoom into all this and see it really clearly. When you pull this whole section over to this area of the chart, look at this. Major high of the overnight session back on the 16th was the high of that chop zone where they failed. And then if you go all the way back over here, major support right off that level that came up and then failed right from our eye level to then come back lower. And basically when they bounced back up into that level, got a failure from it there as well. So in my opinion, all this chop going on right now makes sense because it's one of those little areas of the chart where we get this balance or consolidation. So just some interesting observations. We see this kind of stuff happen over and over again. Whenever you have these little pockets of consolidation, you typically see similar price action when we come back and revisit those areas in the chart. Doesn't mean it happens every time, but just very interesting. So let's go up to the daily and take a look here. On the daily, remember we said yesterday, you can see the markings here on the RVI. There is a little bit of an argument there for that bearish signal, and then we had confluence on the weekly, on the 4-hour, on the 60-minute. So look at what ended up happening here. Yesterday was a bloodbath, despite that breakout to the upside, and now we're pulling back here. And so obviously, just like the candlestick we were looking at coming into yesterday morning, this candlestick that closed for yesterday also looks very, very bearish. Big wick to the upside, very red candle there. So not too surprising because what did we say yesterday? We said we had a pretty good confluence of bearish signals with a very bearish looking daily signal. If we could not really get through the high of the day before, which was 2 days ago now, we were expecting a pullback, and sure enough, that's exactly what we got. So from there now, we're seeing some support, and what I'm going to have to do is jump down into our 60-minute chart so we can start talking about all these levels here. Want to quickly, actually, let me just mention this. We still, in my opinion, depending on how you read divergent signals, there is a weak argument from the highs of the last 2 days for the bears. I'm not going to mark it because I have to be honest with you, doesn't quite meet the type of criteria I would have preferred to have seen, which would have been maybe a more defined peak here on RVI. Because if you look at right now, what we're comparing between the actual peak we have from the two highs right now compared to the peaks I'm showing you back from, I believe, July 9th or June 9th and June 10th here, there's no nice defined peak. It's just like an amorphous part of the move. So not necessarily what I like. But there is a weak argument there on the daily. And then again, the weekly up top, beautiful potential bearish signal if the candle closes the way it looks now. And then the next weekly candle opens and we don't break through the high of this current week. We'll have that. So beautiful on the weekly. If we go down to the 4-hour, we had the beautiful bearish divergence from the high coming into the open yesterday, which gave us our bias for a potential pullback. And then yesterday, sorry, I got a little confused there. Yesterday, we got the breakout at the open, and we came back to test that high of the day before, got a 2-point break through it and failed. And when that happened, we got a 4-hour bearish divergence as well. So just want to mention here on the 4-hour, we do have a nice 4-hour bearish signal from yesterday's high, again, just like we did yesterday. And on the pullback here, I think there is a little bit of an argument for the bullish divergences off of the lows that we're making here in the overnight session. So what does that say? Who's going to win out here? Are the bears going to continue to stay strong, kind of like yesterday, and continue to keep the market down? Or are the bullish divergences we're getting from the lows of the overnight session going to actually follow through for this bounce back up to retrace the sell-off that we got yesterday? So that's what I'm seeing here on the 4-hour. Really good clue yesterday at 7 a.m. that we were going to sell off. And then a decent clue here in the overnight session that we could expect a bounce based on the signals we're seeing. So let's get to the 60-minute where we have our levels. On the 60-minute, we have agreement with what we just talked about on the 4-hour. So going into yesterday morning, very clear bearish divergence from a high of the day before. Got a bullish divergence in the overnight session that led to the push to the highs that we were getting in the morning session yesterday, and then the bearish divergence from the high of the day when we came up to tag 39.50 to the tick, our minor eye level, and then sold off. So nice clear bearish stuff from the highs, and now in the overnight session here, another really beautiful not even potential, really beautiful bullish divergence on the 60-minute as well. So again, the question being, are the bulls going to have that strength to go ahead and rip this back higher and retrace the sell-off from yesterday? Or are the bears just going to go ahead and continue to swat this back down? So on the 60-minute chart, let's talk about the levels. I had to update the three major retracements to the downside here because we pushed 2 points higher. So remember I said if we get higher highs, this leg from 36.39 all the way up to what we had at 39.48, we had to redraw that now to 39.50. And when doing that, it moved the retracement levels up. Move them up by just about 3 to 4 ticks depending on which level we were dealing with. So we've got, first of all, the 38, which I think yesterday we talked about coming into and not really being a strong support. We've also got the 50% here. So the 38's basically done with. We've got the 50% retrace here at 39.74.50. I think yesterday it was closer to 39 or 37.93.50. And then we've got the 61.8, which yesterday I think was 37.57. This morning, 37.57 and 3/4. Okay, so those are the major retracement levels that we're dealing with. And then on the other side, on the bounce back up here, we have the leg down from yesterday's high at 39.50 all the way down to the low of the overnight session here, which gives us the three major retracements back up. Okay, so in that case, let me just list them out for you. We've got the 38 here at 38.64 and 3/4. We've got the 50% retracement up here at 38.81. And then we've got the 61.8 lining up perfectly with the top end of the gap level that we were watching from the gap from last week at 38.97/4. Okay, so those are those three major retracements back up. And then we have some of the swings that I want to mention before we talk about some of the other stuff. So coming up back to the upside here. This level you see here at 38.43. Remember, 38.43 was one of our potential levels of support as we were selling off yesterday. And look what happened. We bounced right off of it to the tick and again got a push from 38.43 all the way to 38.55.75 before it failed back down. So that level there, being that we got some really strong support and a bounce off of it, being that it's been relevant for a long time now, going back major failure there back on June 15th. This might end up acting as a potential resistance this morning if the market does bounce back up off of our minor eye level at 38.12 down here. So be aware of that 38.43. And just like this swing here, we also have one right here at 38.51 quarter, where we also came down, bounced right off of it to the tick, and got a 12-point bounce yesterday. So that's that next swing I want you to be aware of. It also comes basically in alignment with our minor eye level at 38.53, which also was a pretty good support if you zoom in to that candle and look what happened there, like we did at the beginning of the pre-market here. So we've got 51 quarter to 53, a little 2-point pocket. And then we have this final swing low that to me looks pretty relevant here if the bulls get that far up. And that swing low there is at 38.85 and 3/4. So just be aware of that. Okay. Outside of those levels, we have again, this gap that we've been watching, I think because of all of the reactions we're getting off of that area, I'm going to keep these levels on here because they continue to be relevant. So just be aware of the two gap levels we've been watching. Outside of that, we just have our major and minor eye levels, which again, you should have on your chart already. I sent the list out about a week ago now of all those levels. So you should have the major and minor levels on there. Again, they're working out absolutely perfectly to the tick. We're within a few ticks on almost all of these moves. So again, you never know. If we push up into a major or minor level, is it going to be an area where we get some type of bounce or some type of rejection, depending on which direction we're coming from to meet the level. So if we zoom out here and just kind of look at what's going on, we're basically bouncing right in this area where there's a whole bunch of stuff lining up. So let me just see if I can emphasize this little zone. We had a major resistance here back on the 22nd. It acted as a resistance on the end of the 23rd. And we also have a major swing. I go back here from a while ago, all the way back there where we got a very strong, that was the low of the month, I think, where it just ripped from there and we had like a 2, 3, 4, 500 point bounce right from that level. And so that level was a strong support. You come over here to the beginning or mid of June, major resistance from there. And then again, back on June 22nd, major resistance, June 23rd, major resistance. So let's go ahead and zoom in on that level there. That is that swing right there, just above this area here at 38.05. And it's also the two close minor levels, 38.07 and then 38.12, which is the minor eye level that the market bounced off of in our overnight session here. So that little zone here, if I could just highlight here, 38.12 down to that major swing at 04.05, that whole pocket there, which you've seen we've highlighted in the past, is a very critical area. So the fact that we came and bounced at the 12 level and bounced up here with bullish divergence on the 4-hour and the 60-minute, it makes sense to be a level of major support. So if this doesn't hold this morning and the overnight lows get broken and they can't hold above kind of the bottom end of that pocket around 38.05 here, then it looks to me like we're going to be coming down back into the deeper retracement levels and deeper major and minor eye levels here. Okay, so that's what we're looking at coming into the open. If the bulls do find some follow through here this morning and they can hold the overnight lows and get through the overnight high there, we've got a couple levels that make sense as potential resistance. You never know if that's right where we're going to get a failure for a push lower. So be aware of that up to the upside. And on the counter side, if the bears continue to remain strong and we break through 38.05 down here and the overnight, well, to start the overnight low and then 38.05, if that breaks, we're going to be targeting down to these other levels that we have marked on the chart. I don't think there's much else to add coming into the open here. We do have this pocket here, this major swing high over here at about 37.13 down to 37.09, the minor eye level. That pocket, if you zoom out and look, was this major resistance zone back here that really hasn't been cleanly tested. We kind of broke through it and came back up. Sometimes what I see when you have all this reaction from this level, nice support here, and then the market doesn't cleanly use it to the downside or the upside, and then leaves that whole zone, a lot of times when we come back, it then becomes a relevant level the next time. So be aware of that down there. Outside of that, I think we've got it all covered for the morning. So for all those watching on YouTube, have a great trading morning. We'll be back tomorrow as usual, and going to jump down to our members section. So have a great day.